Tonight we have a great debate. Taking the short trips to the parks. Are they a mistake or are they great? This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise ships, and travel. If you don't listen, it's a crime. Tonight, the host will discuss our trips. Some that may not make much sense. But in the end, we will decide if the quick memory is worth the expense. This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise ships, and travel. If you don't listen, it's a crime. Tonight, the host will discuss our trips. Some that may not make much sense. But in the end, we will decide if the quick memory is worth the expense. This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time.
Hello and welcome to Mousecast, the podcast where the mind meets the magic. Hey, this is episode 68, and tonight you heard it in our theme song. We're talking about short trips. Short trips like 72, 48, only 24 hours at Walt Disney World. And we have two short trip experts who are here tonight to talk all about, well, I don't know, is Hawk an expert? We'll have to determine that or not. Hawk's a local now. He doesn't count anymore. Priscilla is here tonight. Priscilla, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
And Matt is back with us. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Chuck, it's great to be back.
Absolutely. Hawk is with us as well. Hawk, we give you a lot of hard times, but you know what? We're always appreciating you're here. Hawk doesn't do, his short trips are like, okay, we're going to go for 5 hours.
Chuck, you are absolutely correct. Now, but when I lived in Boston, I did do a couple of 24-hour or 48-hour trips.
Yeah, I've done one or two
weekends. So I'm pretty adept at this. So
no, I give you a hard time. Hawk has done plenty of these as well. We all have, and you can too if you haven't done it yet. And that's why we're going to talk about this. First and foremost, though, let's get to a little bit of news today. We have a few news elements to talk about. Very recently, new permits were recently filed for the upcoming Cars Land project in the Magic Kingdom, and mostly this was for project trailers and things like that. But it is an indication that construction could get underway in the next few months here. Imagineering shared some videos of the newly refurbished test track cars in advance of the attraction's opening later this summer at Epcot. Now, if you've taken a look at those videos, the design is very muted, nowhere near as heavily flashy designed like the old test track cars. Very, very muted, and reportedly, this is for the cars to better blend in with the attraction's environment. If you're heading to Walt Disney World in late January, the Skyliner will be down for some refurbishment. Now, the good news is it's only expected to last about a week right there at the end of January. And, of course, anytime the Skyliner is down, whether it's mechanical issues or weather, Disney always amps up bus service to the affected resorts. So if you're going in late January, it shouldn't be a major inconvenience.
If you're going in late January, reschedule your trip. You have to have the Skyliner.
You'll be fine. Don't listen to Hawk. Hey, though, speaking of the holiday period, sadly, a major attraction will not be making an appearance for the 2025 holiday season. Ongoing refurbishments, which just started at the Grand Floridian, will mean that the very, very popular gingerbread house located in the Grand Floridian lobby will not be on display for the holidays this year. So if you are heading down for the Walt Disney World holidays, Hawk, behave yourself over there. If you are heading down and you were looking forward to seeing that Grand Floridian gingerbread house, and if you haven't seen it, you really ought to go see it. It is pretty impressive. But unfortunately, it will not be around for the 2025 holiday season. If you like Shula's Steakhouse, you better go eat quickly because it's closing its doors this summer at the Dolphin Resort. And in its place, later on in this year, will be Bourbon Steak by Michael Mina. Apparently, like Shula's, this is going to be a very high-end steak and seafood restaurant. This is one that many in the Orlando area are very excited about. Coming up this week, previews will begin starting April 17th for Epic Universe. Already there have been some media previews that have happened, and some of the videos that have been shared online coming out of Epic Universe really do confirm that this park is going to be absolutely amazing. If you've seen any of the videos, Epic Universe really looks that, I mean, it is going to be absolutely epic. And finally, Destination D is returning to Walt Disney World in late August over at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort. Earlier this week, Disney released some details and ticketing events. By the way, if you're a D23 Gold member, tickets went on sale April 14th. We will have to see, though, what new announcements or updates will be coming this August. In fact, if you remember at last year's Destination D, this is when we first heard about some amazing updates and things that were coming to Walt Disney World, including a lot of changes over at Animal Kingdom and more. So that's it for our news this week. So as we said, we are going to be talking about short trips here at Walt Disney World. And Priscilla and Matt, you both just recently did short trips here in the last month. So Matt, we'll let you go first. Kind of give us a wrap up of your short trip. What were some of your priorities, and also kind of get into the, was it worth it? Because obviously there's a lot involved in putting on a short trip and a lot of effort.
And first, Matt, make sure you tell us exactly how long it was, and what made you decide to take this particular trip in short circumstances as well. So go ahead and give us your breakdown on this amazing adventure.
So originally it was going to be a 24-hour trip for my wife's birthday. She's never been on her birthday. I've been, and it's fantastic to be down at Disney for your birthday. So it ended up being a 40-hour trip. She's like, let's add an extra day and go down for an extra day. I was like, okay, you don't have to twist my arm to go down to Disney for an extra day. And it was definitely worth it. We went without the kids, which is the first time we've been without the kids in quite a while. So just doing Disney as us two, was fantastic to do again. So I definitely think it was worth the memories that we made in such a short time.
So Matt, would 3 hours have been worth it without the kids? Would 3 hours have been worth it?
It's any amount of time. Just having an hour sometimes. Just even if we went down and just had like a little date night, that right there, just to get away and be like, okay, we can.
Yeah, 100%, buddy. The reason I say that is because as a local, that's one of the things we love to do is sneak over and get away just by ourselves to spend a couple hours in the parks. And I think, you touch on a great point that you and your wife are able to enjoy time together in ways that you do the parks differently. Can you speak to that a little bit? How does that change how you do the parks on those trips when you don't have the kids with you?
So we're more laid back. Like my wife likes thrill rides, and I don't. Even though I will say this last trip, I did Seven Dwarfs Mine Train for the second time ever. So it was fantastic. I can't wait to do it again. I don't know why I kept on saying no. Every time my wife asked me, like, let's go on it again. I was like, no. But this time I did it, and I was just like, oh, I forgot how much I actually enjoyed this ride. So it's a little bit more relaxed, even though we were only there for the 48 hours. It's a little bit more of a relaxed environment. We're not pushing a stroller and worrying about, okay, sunscreen, everybody has a snack. What do you want? I want to go see this. I want to go do that. It's okay. What's next? You're going to go do Tron? Okay, I'm going to go to the People Mover or Carousel of Progress, something like that. We can go our own ways. So we found that was a little bit.
So Matt on his trip did watch the Frozen show, and he watched it.
The stroller around, turn over.
So Matt, quick question for you: how did that affect your ability to do food or meals when you were there? Did you change how you chose to eat as a result of not having the kids there?
Not really. When we knew we were doing the short trip, I mean, it was a flowering garden right now, so we still had a game plan of going around Epcot and just kind of hitting like the booths and stuff like that. It's kind of like meals in a way. I mean, the only major meal we had, I think, was breakfast. The one morning we were there, but everything else is like, okay, let's grab something quick and just kind of move along. So
Now, when you were doing Epcot, would you do that with the kids? Would you sample booths when you have the kids there as well?
we would try. It would depend because they're just, I don't want that. Or it's getting them to actually like be somewhat calm in an area. So we go, okay,
Okay.
I want to go grab this. I want to go grab that. It's just like, no, it was like, hey, I want to go over here and I want to go look at the train over in, I think it's Germany or something like that. Or I want to go see, they have the drums over in, I believe it's Japan. So it's just constantly going to actually stop and like actually read the menu and see what they actually have to sample and stuff like that. And then, take a minute to actually be like, oh, this is pretty good. Or it's a little different. So we can stop at more booths instead of just like, constantly going.
Matt, what was one way that you were able to, I think, really maximize your time there? Because obviously, you're there on a short trip, and so you're trying to get as much as you possibly can out of your time. So what do you think were some of your top 2-3 tips that you think would be beneficial for others when they're coming down, and the ways you thought that you really got the most and didn't spend a lot of time waiting for buses and waiting in lines and all that kind of stuff?
So I know everybody knocks on the buses, but I think the longest time we spent waiting for a bus was 5 minutes. And that was leaving Epcot around like 9 o'clock or so. Every time we were just like, bam, bus was there. We just hopped on. So no complaints there. We stayed at All Star Sports, and every time bus was there, maybe we made a minute or two the morning we were there. But other than that, literally a 5-minute wait was the longest. So out of all the knocks on the buses and stuff like that, we didn't have an issue at all. We actually got really chummy with one of the bus drivers on our way going from Hollywood Studios, I think, to Animal Kingdom, and he just kind of gave us some tips. Hey, if you're thinking about going to Epcot later and going to leave, here's what you might want to consider. To beat the crowds and the stuff like that. So that was interesting.
Do you want to share those, or do you want to keep the magic for yourself?
Basically, it's just leave a little early if you don't want to see the fireworks. That was basically it. So it wasn't anything super like, most people would know, like, hey, you want to beat the crowds, leave a little early if you don't want to see the fireworks, if you're not staying in a Skyliner resort, especially. So another tip is park hopper, definitely worth it. We were only there for the 2 days, but it was cheaper to do 2 park hopper tickets than doing like 1 park hopper. And then Tuesday we just did Magic Kingdom, but it was cheaper to do a park hopper, 2 park hopper tickets that way. And then we had when we actually arrived, we ended up Ubering to our resort really quick to drop off our backpacks, stuff like that. And that we found we landed and we're in Hollywood Studios within an hour and a half. So I thought that was just mind blowing.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you about the getting down and getting back part, because obviously you had to carefully schedule flights in order to maximize the day, and how did that work out?
It worked out. It was interesting. So we took first flight out of Providence, 5:30 in the morning. We landed a little after 8:30. Got an Uber. We waited all of 5-6 minutes for that. Went to the resort, dropped off our backpacks, and headed right to Hollywood Studios. And like I said, hour and a half from landing to a park was fantastic. And then on the way back, kind of try to plan like one of the latest direct flights out, which we were trying to think of security on the way home, because sometimes it can be a very long wait. And yeah, we got there through security in less than 10 minutes. And I was planning on 45 minutes to an hour. So
were you flying JetBlue? Were you flying JetBlue?
Southwest.
Oh, okay.
Southwest.
That new terminal in Orlando is
Soft.
super fast. Super
Mhm.
fast.
Yes, it is.
Through Terminal C. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that new terminal. It just Southwest was what we were doing. It was the best option that we had versus JetBlue at this time.
Gotcha.
And then we ended up getting delayed for an extra hour and a half. So not only did we go through security really quick and had extra time, we ended up getting delayed another hour and a half. So that was fun.
That's the downside of taking the last flight out, because any delay that happens throughout the day just backlogs and builds, and you often, your plane doesn't get in, it's already been behind in other locations, doesn't get into the airport on time, your flight goes out, not on time. We always try to, on bookending our vacations, we actually try to get the first flight out all the time, because there's almost never a delay on it. It sucks getting up and going to the airport at 3:00 in the morning, but there are some benefits to that as well. Chuck, before we turn things over to hear about Priscilla's most recent trip, I noticed that there's a photo. And I
Yeah, there was an extra element here that, we happened to run into each other while we were there. So, we had the opportunity for Matt and I to get together for a few minutes and meet up there at Epcot. So I wanted to put this up for folks who were watching, two of us getting together while we were doing that short trip. And I know, Matt, that absolutely was not the highlight of your trip, was it?
Well, all of a sudden, I was, waiting for my wife to out of state. She was getting some food, and this older guy came up to me, and I'm just like, huh. I was just like, and he starts talking about this podcast. I was like, oh, wait a minute. It's Chuck.
Yeah, that's me. That's right. So, yeah, so it was a great meeting up with you.
And we unfortunately missed each other by timing a little bit, because you guys were heading to the airport when I was heading over there. So we weren't able to catch up and miss it. But I did get to see Chuck down there. So, when he was down, but all of you were down essentially within the last 3 weeks. You've all been down. So, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So Priscilla, so you said about a 72-hour trip here.
Yes.
Just recently, like within the last week or two.
Yeah, we flew out last Tuesday.
So take us through it.
So I'm a bit of a planner, but this one we kind of flew by the seat of our pants. Now, my daughter's 21. We are both annual pass holders. So we have fully taken advantage of being pass holders, which I implore anyone that lives out of state that's pretty much the only way to do it, because it's very costly. And the reason I can say that is because my son is not a pass holder, and we bought him a 3-day ticket, and it was exorbitant. It was about the third of the cost of what I paid for my annual pass the first time out of the gate. So we left here. I live just outside of Boston. We flew out from Logan Airport at 6 a.m. We took a 6 a.m. flight on a Tuesday through Frontier, which I had never flown on before. And it actually surpassed my expectations. I wasn't expecting it to be a calm or a good experience. It was actually much better than I expected, and it was a direct flight. We landed in Orlando at just after 9:45. We had a slight delay leaving Boston, and we had a carry-on, and our personal item got off the plane. Literally took us 15 minutes to get from the I believe it's the old JetBlue the old JetBlue area before they built the new terminal where Frontier is now. And we crossed over, went outside to where the Ubers are. I literally hit submit, and our Uber driver was like coming around to pick us up, which I thought was wild. I've never had that quick of an experience with Uber, and literally picked us up, brought us over to Pop Century. They had quoted us like 25 minutes. We were there in 21. Not sure if that's really a good thing, because it was a really fast drive. We picked Pop Century because it was the least expensive, and it was a Skyliner resort. So I knew we had the option of taking the bus or taking the Skyliner, and we could switch hit between Pop Century and Art of Animation if we wanted to. between like food courts and things like that. Our room was ready when we got there, and we literally just hit the ground running. We went in, we changed our clothes, and we went right to the parks. And it was, like I said, we took the Skyliner actually, and ended up, I believe it was at Epcot, and just walked around the world. Like we just jumped right in. We didn't have a plan. We don't ever have, now that my kids are older, because they're almost 16 and almost 22. We don't have a plan like we used to when they were toddlers, when they were younger, when they were school aged, where everything was important. Everything must be prioritized. Everything was a must. We needed to make dining reservations. We needed to make, at the time, Genie Plus or Lightning Lane. Like we needed to have everything ready before we even thought about getting on a plane.
So
we don't have to do that anymore.
So I noticed something, Priscilla, between both you and Matt's experience and other people's experiences that I've heard of doing the very short trip. You start by planning a 24-hour trip.
Mm-hmm.
And then
that was the best part. Yeah, that was the best part.
And in your case, Matt actually wound up planning to stay longer beforehand. You actually made that plan while you were there. You added time, correct?
So originally we went down there with the explicit thought that it was just going to be one day, one night. Like, so when we started planning this three weeks ago, we were just going for the day. It just was going to be me and my son. My daughter decided she wanted to come too. She got the time off from work. So then it was the three of us. My husband kind of didn't want to go for the day. So he was just like, yeah, count me out. I'm out. Then my daughter was looking at prices. She goes, the rooms are really inexpensive. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, so what if we stayed the night? We can get the same flight on the next day and get 2 full park days. And I'm like, okay. And then when we were down there, we're just like, yeah, why don't we just do another night? Why don't we just add another night? So we did. And we were fortunate.
So talk to me about that real quickly, because I found that very interesting. You did that on the fly. How did you do that? Did you get onto the desk? Did you do it online?
We did it online, and we were able. So when we went up to the front desk, we actually asked them, and it's not the first time I've done that. I've actually done it multiple times on other trips where I used to be super meticulous, like I said, about planning. There was this one time where I could not get the airfare to cooperate the way I wanted it to. So when we flew down, we didn't have flights home. And my husband was just like, don't ever do it. This is like, have you heard of the airport theory, people testing the airport theory, how they try to get to the airport within like 30 minutes, like with 30 minutes before their flight takes off, to see if it works at different airports? I don't ever suggest that to anybody, but I also don't ever suggest flying someplace and not have a way to get home, because in some ways you could be setting yourself up for failure. I have never failed, so this was not.
We've had to rent a car. We literally were in Florida and could not book a flight while we were on vacation. Weather delays had affected the whole country, and every flight was backlogged for about a week. We had to get back. We rented a car and made the drive.
And we were prepared to do that one time, is if we had to, but I was like, I'm not going down without a fight. And I was able to do exactly what I wanted to do for the price I wanted to do it, and I did it. In this sense, we were able to change and add. The way that we had it originally was that we were going to fly out the day that we were supposed to fly out on Wednesday. So we were going down Tuesday. We flew out Tuesday. We had the room for Tuesday night. We flew home. We were supposed to fly home Wednesday night. And then when we got down there, Bella was like, no. Bella, my daughter, she said something, and she's like, Mom, you do know that so it was actually not by total accident. She goes, you do know that the flights were home for Thursday, not for Wednesday. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And she's like, yeah, the flights are, because she booked them. This is what happens when I'm not involved. I kind of.
So you got played. And
yeah, I'm about to say that feels like that's what we call a setup.
And let's be honest, Priscilla, this is your daughter we're talking about, and knowing you didn't get played. You just taught her how to play the game.
Yep.
So like you got what you wanted by your daughter thinking she's playing you to get like you both won. Nobody
I'm
lost.
telling you, for anybody
Nobody
that's
lost
that's friend for anybody that's friends with me that has seen my daughter's pictures on Facebook, she is my carbon copy. She is a legitimate copy paste. So it did not surprise me that I did get played. And the more I think about it now, I'm like, I really did get played. It's like arguing with myself. So at this point, I've learned that I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to just let her do it. And like I said, she planned it. She actually paid for the airfare. So I was like, I'm not going to argue with this.
So what are the differences for you, Priscilla? Like, so you're a planner. And like you said, the one thing I think you need to have when you risk taking a short trip is you need to have the ability to have flexibility. Because if you have any delay with your flight, if anything changes, if you have a delay getting into the hotel, like you can have any myriad of problems that change what your plans are. So to me, when we planned our trips, we did one that was probably the most dangerous thing I've ever done, because we planned a 24-hour trip to go to the Christmas party. And at the time, my daughter's mother would only allow me one day, and I had to have her home. And I was like, I don't get my long weekend visitations during the Christmas party. And I worked as a DJ, so I would have had to give up literally large amounts of income to take her on a Friday or Saturday. So I had to figure out a long weekend when they had a party on the Sunday when I could go down, and it worked out. We got it done, and I had 24 hours. I booked a flight that got us in at 2:00 in the afternoon. The party starts, you can get into the party at 4 at that time. So, I'm like, okay, we'll get to the hotel. We get to the airport. There's a delay on the flight. Thank God it was only about 25 minutes. We got in, landed, got to the hotel, got to the front of Magic Kingdom at 3:47. Walked in at 4 and started the party. And we were the last people to exit Magic Kingdom at about 2:35 a.m. when they were clearing the parks. We walked out with the cast, and we had an amazing PhotoPass photographer who actually told us to come back and see her right before close, and she would take some special pictures with us. And we went back and saw her as the park wound down, and we stood in the back of her line, and we waited, and we were the last people she helped. And she took my daughter for about 30 minutes and walked around the hub and just took pictures of her with nobody in the hub in front of the castle. And it was one of the most magical experiences. So one of the things about short trips and your lack of scheduling is you can often find unique opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't, because you're too busy rushing around trying to keep your schedule. And you kind of missed an opportunity with some pins this trip, just not knowing what was going on, but you could have snagged into that. So explain, you told us the story a little bit earlier, but explain to the listeners how paying attention on those solo trips can give you little insight as to things going on in the park that you may not know or something, but there's little things you can watch, like pop-up lines that start forming and you don't know why.
So the best thing that I can recommend when it comes to solo trips, I'm so excited because I'm taking my very first solo trip, fingers crossed, in May. My husband he's pushing for me to be able to do this on my own as an adult, as 47-year-old me that can actually just stop and just take an espresso martini and just walk around to Epcot and just enjoy it. So he's very pro me taking this trip. But the one thing that I will recommend, and the one thing that I do love about having a teenager and a young adult, is their fingers are on the pulse of social media. me being my age, I am on Facebook and a little bit like on TikTok, and I follow all the influencers. But for some reason, my daughter knows about the changes before they're publicly announced because she follows certain, pages, certain, she gets that info, that insider info. And she had shown me, I think the day before we left, I think it was that was the post on Instagram of a series of pins that were being released for and I want to say discontinued, but that is not the word. But for
Deconstruction rides.
yeah,
No
exactly.
longer in
But
the,
rides
no
rides that have
longer in business.
rides that are no longer with us. And one of them was for the Great Movie Ride, and it was an artist collection of 4 pins in a box set, and it was at Epcot. Oh, we didn't even know where they were, but my understanding was that the artist that was a part of this release was in Epcot signing her special edition pins. And it wasn't until the next day that I realized that I didn't put the pieces together. And that's where that was at the entrance of World Showcase at one of the stores. And I was so disappointed because I was searching, I was going back and forth. We stopped at all the pin places. And my heart was broken because one of them was a pin from the Great Movie Ride, which is one of my all-time favorite nostalgic rides. And I really wanted the pin. That was the one thing that I hands down, if I never got another souvenir or piece of merch or pair of ears, that is what I wanted, was just the Great Movie Ride pin. And sadly, I missed out because it was a limited edition. There were only 1,000 sets made.
And I think one of the things that and I don't mean to use that as a bad example. It's I'm sorry you missed that opportunity, but to your point, your daughter's got the finger on the pulse of social media. I've done a couple solo trips down. I was a little hesitant to do them. The first time I took a solo trip down, I was so bummed out my daughter wasn't allowed to come with me. I made a flat cardboard version of her and took pictures with all the cast members of her there and it was a life-size version, and it was absolutely hilarious. It like blew up on social media.
I just want to stop there and just picture the thought of Hawk trying to get that through security. Just ruminate that.
Are you ready for this? I am so creative. It folded up into a backpack, flat as day. I had outfits I could change on it. So each day in the park, it wore a different outfit. I had Velcro heads cut out life size that I had Velcro that you could put a picture with different expressions. So when I did it during COVID, there was one with a mask, one with a smile, one with a frown. Like we just had a blast.
I need to know what T's reaction was to that.
So she was.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
She did wind up finding it kind of funny. There were elements of it that some people got real creeped out over and thought it was very odd. If people actually knew how much we were going to Disney at that time, the cast members, we knew so many of them. So when I would bump into them, they would be like, "Where's T?" And I'd be like, "Right here." And I'd flip her out.
What was she middle? She must have been middle school aged around this time?
Yeah, she was probably that age.
She was probably like, "Dad, that is so cringe."
She was 4'11". So I mean, I had a 4'11" cardboard cutout of Tegan, and I have pictures. The pictures were this thing was so good that it's crazy. And some of the pictures, she actually looks real. Like I've literally had people tell me like, "Wow, Tegan looks a little." I'm like, "That's not Tegan. That's a piece of cardboard." And I'll find pictures. I'll share it on a future show. But we've done stuff that like when you go experience things by yourself at Disney, and you're not afraid to be a little goofy, and you can be comfortable in your own skin. There is so much magic that happens. Yes, she was bored. I
was going to say, Tom, we're going to get to that here in a second, but yes.
Cardboard. But this funny story that year, she got a box from the entire cast of the dinosaur ride at Christmas. that everybody sent her. She got a t-shirt, a backpack, dinosaur toys, a Christmas card that said how they had missed her for the holidays. She got a plushie for Mickey's 90th birthday from the Jungle Cruise, and then they bought her a sweatshirt and sent me home with it for her. The cast that you became close with really becomes part of your family when you frequent Disney. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of those cast members that truly do become friends and people you stay in touch with. And that solo trip aspect, so many people are afraid to go by themselves because they feel they're not going to have someone to talk to or someone to befriend them. The wait staff, the CMs, the ride operators, the entry hosts, the security guards, they'll all have conversation with you. Open the door to that conversation and your solo trips can be epic. They can be absolutely astounding.
Absolutely. In fact, Tom Brewer, who is commenting with us right now, he says solo trips are actually a lot of fun. My wife doesn't like to travel and doesn't do Disney. It's a different experience to walk around the parks just doing what you want wherever you want. For example, he says, I like to take pictures. Tom, I'm right there with you. I love to take a ton of pictures too. When I'm by myself, I don't have to worry about waiting for the perfect picture. And Tom's exactly right. And, so part of that, Matt, kind of reflecting on your trip, how much of that was really, did you kind of plan out? And how much was it of your trip was just, we're going to walk in and just kind of do and see, that the environment and the crowds and just whatever is happening, kind of, you literally go with the flow.
Yeah, so expect the unexpected was kind of the theme for this trip. We were originally just planning to do, when it was the 24-hour trip, it was, okay, my wife wanted to go do Rock and Roller Coaster before they retheme it. I wanted to go see Muppets before that goes away. So that was definitely the first thing we were going to do when we went to Hollywood Studios. After that, it was, okay, we're going to Epcot at night. Can we go do the World Showcase, grab something to eat, grab something to drink? That was really the only plan. And then when it became a 48-hour trip, it was, okay, we'll do Hollywood Studios in Epcot day one. We'll spend your birthday at Magic Kingdom. And what ended up happening was we went to Hollywood Studios, and once I did Muppets and she did Rock and Roller Coaster, we looked at the wait times. We're just like, we're not really Star Wars people. It was about an hour and a half wait for both of those attractions. It was over an hour for Slinky Dog, and I think it was close to an hour for Alien Saucers and everything over in Toy Story Land. So like, okay, let's go to Animal Kingdom. Okay, no problem. So we weren't even planning on Animal Kingdom, but since we had done the Park Hopper, we went over there for a little while. We rode Dinosaur before they ended up getting rid of that ride. We went to go see Meatball. So I got to see him playing with Mom. So that was really fun to see the tiger. Besides videos, exactly. So, and then we ended up over at Epcot. So the rides went down that we weren't expecting to go down, especially I think on Tuesday, Tron went down for a little while. And I think Guardians went down briefly on Tuesday night. And it was just like, okay, well, we'll just figure out something else to do. More or less my wife, because those two rides I wouldn't do. But we just find other things to do just with the flow. So it wasn't a big plan as far as, okay, we have to go here. We have to go here. It was like, okay, what do you want to do next? Let's go grab a margarita over in Mexico. Okay, no problem. Then we'll walk around and, maybe we'll end up stopping at a food stand, or it was a lot different than having more structure as far as, okay, we want to go here, we want to go here. Let's always flow throughout the park to hit all the different rides. It was, okay, where to next? Okay. So it was definitely a different experience.
Yeah, and one of the things that as we talk about this, obviously, Priscilla, your particular trip, and Matt, yours as well. Hawk, yours when you were talking about your short trip for Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party. These were very planned, specific. Walt Disney World was the destination. But you know what? You also want to keep in mind that there are opportunities to embed. Oh, there we go. There's cardboard Tegan right there. There we go.
The beaches and cream with our favorite waitress, which like it was all in good fun, but it was definitely a hilarious thing to do.
It is life size. I do have to admit that is kind of life size. So, but I've got a short trip that I've got coming up in June, and it's all because my son and I are going down for a cruise. Well, sailing out of Port Canaveral, why not build in a little short trip to either front it or post your cruise? And that's what we're doing. And it actually, the genesis behind that was, again, kind of back to Priscilla. It was all about the airfare. And I could get the airfare to work better by adding in a front day and arriving, essentially, almost 2 days early. Not quite 2 days early, but early to be able to then have a day and we're staying a night or two at Pop, but just planning one day in the parks, and the next day, of course, you make your way over to the cruise terminal and heading out to sea. But so as you're thinking about these short trips, it doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm going just because I want to go to Walt Disney World. You can build it around other things that are coming up. Again, a cruise pre-trip or post-trip is a brilliant and excellent way to get in a short trip to Walt Disney World. And frankly, it's a great excuse. You're already down there, so go ahead and add an extra day or two.
So here's another one that I suggest to a lot of people when I was working as a TA. People that are interested in going out to Hawaii. They want to spend time in Hawaii. I always tell people, book a day to 3 days at Disneyland. Like when you're going out there, if you're going that far out and you're a Disney fan, break up that flight. Stop at LAX, spend a day or two, get your body back acclimated, and do it on the way home is always my suggestion. Because if you've spent 10 days in Hawaii, you're 6 hours off East Coast time. So when you're coming back, bridge that gap a little bit, spend a couple days and get acclimated to Cali time. That 3 hour difference, it's an easier transition coming back to the East Coast. And it gives you a little bit of a break because that flight is monotonous. So, I know, Chuck, you've traveled extensively, planning those breaks in a trip, even if it's just for a day, even if it does throw off the airfare a little bit or throw up the memories you can make to simplify the burden on your body and your mind and fatigue. When you do a 24-hour trip, we talked about this, Chuck, a little bit before the show. When you do a 24-hour trip, it can beat the snot out of you physically. I mean, we did that Christmas trip for Tegan. We landed at 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday, and we were back on a plane at 2:30 in the afternoon on Monday. Now, we didn't land in Boston until about 5 p.m., but we were up till 2:30 in the morning, and we had a 7 a.m. BOMA reservation with 19 friends the next day, and we went down to celebrate a couple friends' birthdays. We were exhausted. We were on fumes. So those short trips can be exhausting, but you can also use them to prevent that exhaustion by breaking up long trips, especially if you're going significant distance.
Yeah, exactly. And here's one other piece for that, because if you're doing a short trip and you have a hotel stay, this is an opportunity really to take advantage of the fact that you actually have a bed on property. Because if you're going to do a short trip, Priscilla talked about this, Matt talked about this, Hawk, you talked about this at all. Odds are you're taking that red-eye early AM flight, okay, which means you're getting at the airport at dark 30. So going in and saying, you know what, it's okay, I'm going to carve out 2 hours after lunch, and I'm going back to the hotel real quick, and I'm crashing. And then that gives you the opportunity, you've refreshed, you've gotten a little sleep, that you can then take advantage of what, in my opinion, is the premium hours at any park. And it's not in the morning. It's closing the park down.
Sleep is for the weak. You can do it when you get home. Don't do
I think
it on
that's the best.
Don't listen to Hawk.
I think that's the best advantage, though, when you don't have younger kids. you can do that because by the time, so we took a 6 a.m. flight, like I said, and getting there early, mid morning, and deciding to have lunch and then going to the room to change, freshen up, lay down for about a half hour and just kind of, gather our bearings, change our clothes, change our shoes, and then go back out. By the time we actually got out and got into the parks, a lot of the toddlers were starting to have that like 2:30 slump where they're just like, they're either hangry or they're tired. So a lot of the parents, who, follow their children's cues and
Started their
don't let them.
slump at one.
Well, it's like, because I remember like when my kids were in daycare, that's usually when it would hit them. Like, I know for me that it's like you hit that wall at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, where it's, 3 a.m. is the witching hour, but at 3 p.m. is like that, you hit that wall.
Yeah.
So when we would be going into the parks, you would see this drove of people that are just leaving, that are already starting to line up. And, we learned early on to either leave when everyone is lining up for the fireworks, or you wait it out until 3/4 of the park are, fanned
Oh yeah,
out
no,
already.
I absolutely suggest actually the opposite is that if you can do it, close the place down. And in fact, if you have the opportunity and you're staying at a deluxe resort and they happen to have one of those night hours where where a particular park is open 2 hours later just for deluxe resort guests, by all means, absolutely take advantage of it. We did that at our last trip, back at the end of March, and in the span of 2 hours, we did every roller coaster that was open at the Magic Kingdom. Of course, Big Thunder Mountain was down, but we did Tron, we did Space Mountain, we did Seven Dwarfs. Oh, and by the way, we walked on Buzz. Just at the very end because we were heading out and it was almost there. And hey, Buzz is still open. We literally just walked on Buzz. But
And you got the twin killings maxed out.
I maxed out the left and I was halfway maxing out the right. I was getting close. But as we said from a previous show, all that's going to change. So if you want to go become a galactic hero, you better do it soon on Buzz Lightyear before they change things.
So Chuck, you brought up a good point though, and I think, as you know, because the purpose of this show was kind of debate the pluses and minuses of those short trips, because while they have amazing and intense benefits, there's also some burdensome qualities that you may want to really rethink whether or not you want to take a short trip if you're traveling with small kids, because you are going to burn the candle at both ends and it's going to be very tough on you. So, I think early on for me traveling with Tegan, we averaged 5 to 6 trips a year going down to Disney. And, we were doing as short as a quick weekend. We'd fly down on a Friday night, get down there late, pick her up after school, catch like a 6, 7 o'clock flight, get down there 10, 11, check in, and then take the flight first thing Monday morning. So we'd really only have 2 park days in. And she would be exhausted. Like the next school week would be hard for her. That'd be tough, because we were open to close park people. Even when she was young, she was a trooper, and we would not go take naps. We were legit open to close. The one thing we did is we always did 3 sit downs a day, and that's where we got our break. We would sit for like an hour, sit in the AC, eat some food, slow it down a little, not just grabbing a quick bite and jumping to the next ride. But that's one of the things you want to consider when you're planning these trips, because as an adult, to Priscilla's point, it's fantastic. We turn it on a little, we push a little hard, we get through it, we can enjoy it. Solo trip, same thing. You make those incredible memories. You do what you want to do. No one's telling you what to do, where to go. You want to sit down on the bench and take a nap, you sit down on the bench and take a nap. You want to run around, you can do whatever you want. The freedom of a solo trip is amazing. Short trips are amazing under the right circumstances, but you really need to think and consider about how that's going to affect the other people you're with, how your family would adapt to that, because regardless to short trip or long trip, you're going to Disney. It's not cheap. You're putting a lot of money into that procedure regardless. As a local, it changes. I've got a unique perspective to that now, because I can make that 45-minute drive over and say, hey, Chuck, I really want to, be able to hang out and say hello and do this stuff and, be like, yeah, let's go meet in Galaxy's Edge. And, here we go. Let me see if I can pull this one up. And we'll use the Force.
And we'll use the Force, and we'll mess around together. So yeah.
And clearly we don't use it well.
No, we don't.
but you have that freedom when you're local, that we can take a short trip down to the point where I've walked into Hollywood Studios and said, nope, too crowded. Turn around, walk back out, got my car and left. And that's a luxury that I can't even fathom having. I tell Jen, to this day, I've been here 3 years now, when I drive after work to Disney and drive under this sign, I'm like, this is insane to me. This is something I saved months for when I lived up north. I was Priscilla. I planned for weeks and weeks and weeks to get this all ready. And now I just drive over on a whim because we want to get beignets at French Quarter or whatever we want to do. So what would you guys all say is, give me your number one pro to taking a short trip, but give me your number one con as well. Like, where does it make you question the worth of the trip? Like, should I go longer? Because both of you planned 24-hour trips that turned into longer ones because you're Disney nuts, and that's okay. That's what we do. But what are the cons? What was the con when you thought about 24 hours and said, you know what? We can make it longer. So give me, Matt, I'll start with you. We'll kind of go around the horn from where I'm at. Give me your number one pro for the short trip and your number one con.
So I think the number one, I'll start with the con first, is just, I think after the trip it makes you miss Disney more because you feel like you rushed. Okay. I think that was the biggest con, especially like we weren't planning on going this year. Like, well, I was planning on going just for a day, literally for my wife's birthday. So, and it turned into the 2 days. But for me, at least, I'm just like, okay, when can I go back now? Like, we're going to go back next year. We have a couple other small trips planned this year elsewhere. So I was like, okay, and my daughter is just like, she told me the other day, she's like, I'm not a cold weather person. I'm a Disney weather person. So the kids love going down. So it's just like, okay, when are we going to make this happen? So that small trip, it gives you that little bit of a taste, but that's all it is, because you're kind of rushing to hit what you want, but at the same time, you don't get to experience everything that you would normally do in a longer trip. The pro, I definitely think, is, especially for this trip, was just the memories, just bringing back even old memories and making new memories with just me and my wife. Going back to when we first started going to Disney, just having that, us time. It was just us two, it was more of a go with the flow.
I love that.
Don't have to worry about, like I said, pushing a stroller and all the extras. It was just like, okay, we got water, we got clothes on our backs. We're just going to go and see what the day brings. Just having a little bit more freedom. I think that was one of the biggest pros that we got from this trip.
I think that's an awesome answer. And I mean, like, not having to lug the diaper bag is, that's a huge plus to be able to go enjoy that. Unfortunately, Chuck and I are back to having to carry one again, but it's for us. It happens. But
dude, speak for yourself. I mean, I know I got to lug you around, but I mean, seriously, you had to admit that?
Depends. Anyway, Priscilla.
Folks, he's here all week. Be sure to try the veal.
Anyway, coffee's kicking in. Priscilla, what do you got? What are your pros and cons for a short trip from a realistic side? Like, what works for you and what doesn't?
So being a realist, I always plan for the worst, hope for the best, and if I can get somewhere in the middle, that's usually, if I can come out, even in the middle, I'm whole. The best part, for me, the pros, again, I have one teenager and one adult child that, even though she's a full-time college student, she has a full-time job with adult money. So I don't have to pay for her anymore. She actually paid pretty much for everything, for her part in this trip, which was fantastic. So the cost is less. I also enjoy the thrill of trying to get the most bang for my buck and not put everything like on credit cards. Like, I don't have a specific Disney credit card. If I can't afford to pay it all out in cash or like, on a, in full, I won't go. It's just, that's the thing. But I mean, take into consideration that, this is the second time I've already been down and I've already got 2 other trips planned this year. So it's, you know what I mean? It's fun doing this as an adult with adult money. But I like the thrill of, chasing the deal, making sure that, the airfare is the biggest thing. It's the costliest part aside from the accommodations. But what I loved is, especially with a short trip, is being able to, my kids actually cooperated and wanted to take photos. I have great shots of my son who rarely likes it when I take his photo. He'll take his own photos. He'll take his own selfies, his own pictures. But for him to pose for me, yeah, and it's so funny because they're like dark and brooding, and then he puts like the filters, or like he'll make them black and white to make them more artsy. He's definitely got that photography bug. But he actually cooperated. So I have some great photos of him and I, and of him and his sister, and then the 3 of us together. And it's amazing to see the man he's become from the little boy that I first brought down there at 9 months. So it's great to see the transition. And definitely being able to bring a smaller bag is like ideal, because the bag I bring is like this big now. As opposed to a diaper bag or even a full-size backpack. If it's not a lounge fly, it's one of the smaller bags. Cons, believe it or not, I would have to say that sometimes the shorter trips, you don't plan some of the things that you probably should. So that leaves us like scrambling, because we didn't have any intentions on making dinner reservations, for example. And at the last minute, I'm like, okay, let's just do, dinner roulette and see what's open or what's available. We're in this park or we're in this resort. Where can we find food? I mean, sometimes you get lucky and it's,
And you touch on something as a local, I'll say, that is a big factor for us, because we go over with no plans in mind. And one tip I will tell you is, Disney utilizes the walk-up list at a lot of places now. And if you're on site near a restaurant, check the app, see what the estimated wait time is. But you often will look at some of the most popular restaurants on Disney property and have a 10 to 25 minute wait for a dinner reservation. You can get into those places and do a walk-up. That's one of the nice freedoms as well of not having plans. But you touched on something that like just kind of sparked my mind a little bit when you're talking about, not planning out ahead as much. The plus to the short trip in that is instant flexibility, not necessarily at the park, but in your ability to choose the date of travel, because you're not having to take significant time off from work. It could be calling out for a day. It could be leaving for a day. Like that short notice trip when you find that one-off deal, 50% off flight, great opportunity, if you allow yourself to have the flexibility to travel when the deals arise, you can get those short trips in, make some memories, and do it on a budget-friendly stance. And that's a good reason to always have some pocket money set aside for that instant grab trip, that adult money that you can grab and take.
Yeah, no.
To enjoy something. You know, I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective, but as you said that, I was like, you really can just take a last minute trip a lot easier when it's a 24, 48-hour trip, because you don't need all that logistical assistance when you're taking 10 days off. You know
That's
what I
the
mean?
best. I think that sometimes it works out better that way when you can split it up into, to be honest with you, I think I would rather take 2 or 3 smaller trips and spread them out, 3 days, 4 days, 3.
And as a pass holder, that works great for you.
Mhm.
I think that is a big difference for people that are only, because if you're purchasing tickets on a trip, it's going to behoove you to save money by staying longer.
Yep.
You stretch it out. But if you're going to visit Disney more than 10 to 12 days in a year, and you were planning more than one trip to go down and do it, it's worth the
AP all the way.
Yeah,
it's worth
definitely
of the annual pass, because one, you can get the discounted hotel room rates if they're available with the AP discount. You can take advantage of discounts on food in several places, and you can start to make that pay itself back to you a little bit.
Plus, don't forget about the discounts on retail, and some of those retail discounts can be significant.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
like
for those
t-shirts. Seriously,
I don't know what you're talking about.
that's No, seriously, the t-shirts are a big thing. My daughter, every trip, walks away with at least 2 t-shirts, at least.
Chuck buys the collared ones because he's wicked classy. But
the best for me, the one thing that I did for merch is every trip I get a new Pandora charm, because
we do mugs.
Yeah, and some of them are exclusive just to the parks too.
And so my daughter and we got the flower and garden one for last year, and then we have the flower and garden one for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And what was great is that they sell them in a collection of 2. So she has one and I have one, and we got the discount on the set. So for me, it's ideal to get my charms there as opposed to getting them here at my local Pandora.
Chuck, what about you? What's your pro and con on a short trip?
So, here's the one thing that we have to kind of bear in mind. And so the con for me really does come to price, because, Priscilla, you're talking about flying out of Boston, a major airport that's nearby. Matt, you were flying out of, again, another major airport that's close by. Hawk, when you were doing your 24-hour trips, again, you had major airports nearby. We have a lot of folks, though, that are watching and listening, myself included, who do not have a major airport. And by that, I mean there's usually a nonstop, low-cost, direct flight airline into MCO, Orlando International. For like us here in Roanoke, we do have a direct flight, but it is to Sanford. The difference is, of course, that trying to get, if you ever take an Uber from Sanford down to the parks, that's a pricey Uber. That's a fair amount.
Hey, Chuck,
yeah.
I'm gonna help you personally out.
You're going to pick me up at the airport next time? Hawk, I appreciate you, man.
But we live about 20 minutes from Sanford. So we could arrange to get you the Smart Hawk Uber for a discounted and affordable rate.
There we go, a hawker. We're going to get the Hawkber the next time. But yeah, so for us, that the cost does become a consideration, because you do have to either consider I can get the cheap flight into Sanford, but then I've got to add the cost, assuming Hawkbird's not available, to be able to get to the parks and back. So that now adds to your transport fees, to your transport costs. Or the other direction is that you're flying into MCO, but because where we are, that automatically requires a connecting flight somewhere, your flight costs are starting to jump up. The benefits, though, Priscilla and Matt have really kind of touched on this, and I'm kind of expanding on it. It is the fact that not only do you not have to plan, but in many respects, you don't want to plan. Walk in and just enjoy the place. This also gives you the ability to really stop, smell the Disney roses, as it were, and pick up all those little Disney details that you may not ever do an attraction at all. You may not ride one ride or do one show. You're just enjoying the time spent with cast members. Again, always spend time with those cast members whenever you get the chance, but also to pick up and really appreciate all of those incredible details that the parks are just chock full of. And so that's what I like about that. It gives you the freedom and the flexibility to just kind of go at your own pace. You don't have to run and gun. If you want to run and gun, knock yourself out. Run and gun by all means. But you don't have to. You can do what you want, how you want it, because the only time schedule you're on is yours. All right, so Hawks, to wrap us up, give us your pros and cons.
So for me, the con is it's a similar theme for everybody. It's a combination of cost and getting a taste of something you love that you want more of. Just not having enough time to do all the things. It's a great special treat, but at the end of the day, when we did our 24-hour trip, for my daughter and I, it was almost $2,500 for 24 hours. And we were pass holders. So that was not with tickets for the parks, but we had Christmas party tickets, souvenirs, nice dinners, everything else. But at the end, the pro is the memory. And I mean, to be the last people to exit the park and be able to sit with cast and, leave that night with that memory. She knew she was the last one in the park. That was so amazing and special for her. You can't beat the memories you can make at Disney. You experience these amazing times, and sometimes the money really truly doesn't matter. And when you can find that special opportunity, Matt just got to spend his wife's birthday with her without their kids and be kids again together on their own terms for 48 hours. Priscilla spoke about having her son posing for pictures and making memories that don't frequently happen as our kids get older. So for Priscilla, having her daughter and her son there for that short time together and creating those memories becomes one of the most magical experiences she can have. And it's a Disney trip she will always treasure. So at the end of the day, if you can use the Force with Chuck Lionberger, it is worth going to Disney to experience the Force with Chuck. There's nothing better. I think we've really touched on some great points tonight. And, I think Chuck would agree. You guys made amazing memories, and you took a chance on something that to a lot of people doesn't make a lot of sense, but you made it make sense for you. And what it comes down to is if a short trip is right for you, don't hesitate doing it. If a solo trip is what you have in mind, make the memory and take it. Don't let fear or uncomfort of not doing something before prevent you from making some of the best memories of your life. I promise you're not going to regret it. And if you
wholeheartedly.
And if you need to take the longer trip, come spend money and join us in Florida. We love that you support our economy. Thank you for visiting.
There you go. But Hawk, to your point though, it's not just that you're spending the money, you're investing. It's not that you're investing in, much as you say, investing in Florida, yeah, you're spending money down there, but you're investing in you, you're investing in your family, and you're investing in memories. 100. And, at the end of the day, everybody always says at the end of our road, we can't take it with us. But the one thing we do have is memories, and that's one thing that lives forever. It lives beyond who we are. And so investing in those memories and doing things like these short trips, fantastic way to make memories. Hey, what do you think? Have you tried a short trip to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, maybe Tokyo Disneyland, or another of the great Disney parks around the world? Let us know what you think. Check us out on Facebook. You can find us on Facebook at Mousecast 2025. That's Mousecast 2025 on Facebook, or find us again on YouTube at Mousecast over on YouTube. We are live every Tuesday night at 8:30. And remember, at the end of the month, the last Tuesday of every month, it's a special time. It's game night. We especially want you to join us for game night here on Mousecast. I want to say a huge thank you to Matt and to Priscilla for sharing their short trips to Walt Disney World. And, of course, a huge thanks to my master partner and fellow Jedi, Hawk, for being with us today. You will watch Mousecast each week. You will watch Mousecast each week. You've been listening to Mousecast. Thank you so much for listening to us. And until next time, we'll see you.
Mousecast Podcast, thanks you for listening to our show. When you let the mind meet the magic, it's where the deep thoughts flow. This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise, ships, and travel. If you don't listen, it's a crime. Short trips have some pros and have some cons. Tonight we debated if they were worth it for us. The memories we make are always great, but for you, would the trip be worth it, or would it be a bust? Short trips have some pros and have some cons. Tonight we debated if they were worth it for us. The memories we make are always great, but for you, would the trip be worth it, or would it be a bust?